This video has spoilers for Resident Evil 6.
Okay, I just beat Resident Evil 6, and I have to say, I actually kind of liked it. I don't know if that's like a controversial take, but I kind of liked it more than I liked Resident Evil 5. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little bit bored with Resident Evil 5 until Albert Wesker shows up. When Wesker shows up, everything gets goofy, and Chris punches a rock, and I'm like, this is the best game ever. Why couldn't this have been like the past how many chapters? I don't remember how many chapters that game is, but I was kind of like, yo, this needs to be, this should have been the game. Was all this goofy nonsense going on. Wesker's talking about Wesker babies, Wesker children. I don't remember, but I was having a lot of fun with it at that point. And Resident Evil 6, you know, narratively, it doesn't really do something that crazy, but I do feel like the set pieces, like the action.
I was sick of this place anyway.
Dude, can we just get out of here? Oh my, kind of feels like that. The weirdest thing that happened in Resident Evil 6 was the Ada Wong clones, but I guess maybe I will get into that. Maybe I won't. Okay, there was an Ada Wong clone. Never mind. I'm gonna save it. Okay, but anyway, I'll try to run through the campaigns because I did enjoy the game. I still wouldn't say it's like a good Resident Evil game, but it's like a fun romp if you have low expectations. I did think it was weird. The game started out with you playing as Leon and someone named Helena, whom I don't know, and you just gotta like save her, and you do these like, it's kind of boring. You do these like quick time events, and you know, you run away from like an explosion and stuff. Dash. Like now, which way? And I feel like if they just let me play the campaigns first, that would have been like a better opening, because I feel like, you know, people who are waiting for Resident Evil 6 would have just been, oh, this is a little boring, because it's kind of just quick time events in the beginning. But I was just asking questions like, who is Elena? Where are we? I think they do say we're in China in that opening. I'm not super sure, but there's like 4 campaigns you pick from, and I picked, who'd I pick? I picked Sherry first, but I actually kind of want to talk about Leon first, because Leon's campaign felt really Resident Evil-y, I think, the most out of everybody, because his was mostly about fighting zombies. I think he fights the people, what are they, Juavo, I think is what they're called. I think he fights the zombies pretty much entirely through the thing, and it has a slow opening. You know, like, I think it starts with him and the president. He killed the president, but I mean, the president was technically already dead because he was transformed, but he kills the president, and then some dude named Simmons like frames Leon, and he has to prove his innocence, I guess, throughout the game, and Helena's with him. I don't really know. Maybe they told me, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't really know who Helena is. I won't even lie. I don't know who Helena is. She was like my partner throughout the thing, and that's about all I remember. Yeah. But yeah, we start out, where do we start? We start out in the city, and I think we're supposed to make it out of, are we in Raccoon City? I don't know where we are, but we're in some city that's not China yet, because most of the city segments start with are in China, but I don't think we're there yet. And I remember specifically, we're trying to escape a zombie outbreak, and we got in a cop car and immediately crashed it. And I was just like, oh yeah, this is this is Resident Evil, because there's no vehicle that survives in Resident Evil ever, except Chris's campaign, but I'll get into that, because anyway, and Ada's anyway. Yeah, so we drove it maybe like 10 feet and we immediately crashed it. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't really remember too many of the motivators that drive Leon to do what he does, but I know there was one point where Helena needs to reach a church. I remember that she needs to go to a church, and not to see God, but to, apparently there's like some sort of secret that's there. She's looking for her sister. I don't know who her sister is, but we're looking for her sister. We find an underground, we get to the church, we protect people. Oh, that's one section I did like. As we're escaping the city in the first chapter for Leon, we do a lot of missions where we like are supposed to save citizens. We save a bunch of citizens, and there's like a defense section where you don't get to board up the windows, but you get to look out the windows, and you get to kind of, it's like a, you know, like in Resident Evil 4 when you and Louise are defending the cabin. If you've played it, you're defending the cabin. It's kind of like that, except you got to protect citizens. That's a little fun. When we get out of the city, Helena's like, we got to get to a church. There's information, or maybe she says her sister's there. I don't remember, but she's like, we got to get to this church. My sister's there. We do some puzzles, which is very Resident Evil-esque. We do some puzzles. We discover that underneath the church, there's like this whole, I don't know, like ancient structural thing. And at the bottom of it, we find Helena's sister, which I thought was weird. I'm like, what does she have to do with any of this? And why is she on this stone bed. It kind of seems like there was like a ritual going on. I don't think so, because she transforms the minute we find her. Ada shows up, helps us defeat her. She's like a boss fight. And then we get a flashback to Helena and her sister, who have been captured as hostages by the antagonist Simmons, who I think is evil because he's rich. And Jesus, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining the story, but I really don't get it. I think he's evil because he's rich, and he captured Helena for, I don't know why he captured Helena, but he took Helena's sister hostage and like experimented on her, and Helena had to work for Simmons, just as like a blackmail piece, like, oh, if you don't work for me, your sister might not make it out, so that's what we were doing. And what do we do after we kill her sister? That sounds bad. What do we do after that? I think we head to China afterwards, and there's this cool plane section where we're on a plane, and I think someone drops like a big blue gas. There's a monster in there, and he has this gas that he releases onto the plane, and it's transforming people. I think it's called the C virus, which I think they have the T virus, G virus, and C virus, so you could make the TCG virus, the trading card game virus. But anyway, yeah, he that's pretty cool. It kind of reminded me of Uncharted. I think it's in the beginning of Uncharted 3, or maybe it's in the middle. I don't remember if they start off like that, but yeah, there's a cool plane section where a monster shows up in the hangar. We got to kill him. He is able to infect other people by releasing a blue gas, which transforms everybody else on the plane. So we got to fight our way back through the plane, somehow pilot the plane. It then kind of turns, something breaks one of the wings, I think, and we have to fight our way to not fall off the plane as we're fighting the boss. And then what else happens? We crash it. Why isn't she doing it? I don't know.
How many levers does it take to...
I don't know why they made me do it.
We're almost there.
Oh. Is there Ada on a train? You're telling me we survived that? Obviously, Leon will crash any vehicle, I think. So we crash it and we survive somehow. I don't know how we survive, but in the church, I forgot to mention, in the church, the chapter beforehand, we discover that Ada Wong has been cloned. So I don't know what's going on there. She's been cloned, and there's another Ada Wong running around doing things, doing some dastardly deeds. And obviously, the other Ada just never explains anything to us.
Why the hell would he do all this?
Long story.
Oh my God, it's always a long story. Can you just tell us? She's like, oh, you poor thing, Leon. You don't know anything. And he's like, yeah, I don't know anything because he won't tell me. And she's like, oh, too bad. And then zips away on her little, grappling hook. So that's what she does. Starting to wonder what he sees in her. I don't really know what it is, but it's got to be something. Maybe it's the leather pants she was wearing in this game. I don't know. Maybe Leon just likes leather pants. But yeah, eventually we make our way into the city after we crash the plane. And, I think this is after we discover that the man we're after is actually Simmons, clearly. And we find out, I think Simmons is in China. So we go to China, crash the plane in China, as one does. And eventually, we make our way through there. We find Simmons. I think the city section for Leon, the China section, was probably not the least interesting section, only because, I don't know why. It just wasn't super interesting to me from what I remember. But you do get to fight Simmons at the end of it. And you fight him in chapter 4 and 5. And what does he do? He's got like transformer powers. Yeah, he has like an enhanced version of the C virus, and he transforms into a dinosaur. Also like a bull with a big tail. And you fight him. And then during that boss fight with the dinosaur, Ada Wong shows up in a helicopter and starts blasting him. And then later on, some soldier shows up. He's a hero. He shows up and he delivers us a car with 2 turrets conveniently on the back of it. And we fight him and drive around in circles. And the dinosaur just chases us as we shoot him with the turrets. And then the dinosaur flips that car. And then the guy who brought it to us dies in a fire, which I thought was unwarranted because that car was totally fine, but then all of a sudden just combusts and he dies. Holy. Is our friend alive? No. You didn't even have to do that. Then we, eventually we beat Simmons and we make our way up to a tower. I don't remember why. A lot of this is just going to be me talking about what happens, but not being able to understand the story. There's a lot of campaigns. I don't know how to piece it all together, but yeah, Leon and Helena make their way up a tower, and Simmons is still alive, but he's like a big, gigantic, fat fly, and we zap him. There's like a pole, there's like a thunder rod that falls from the sky, which they don't explain until you get to Ada's story. It falls from the sky, and you impale the thunder rod into a zombie because Simmons needs to absorb those zombies in order to, I guess, regenerate any damage you do to him. But he can't regenerate it if he gets zapped by lightning, apparently. So you stab the zombie with the thunder rod, he absorbs that zombie if you do enough damage to him, and then the thunder will strike him and then does like big damage to like his core or whatever, his face, which he's trying to protect. Anyway, yeah, that's Leon's story. It was Leon proved his innocence somehow. I don't know how he did it, but things worked out in the end, I guess. So that's Leon's story.
The investigating commission have reviewed the evidence and feel it unjust to hold you liable for Simmons' crime. They will also not be disclosing their findings to the public.
But
The president would have done the same.
No, he wouldn't. I don't know who Helena is. I don't know who Deborah is. I wish I could be more emotional because we killed Helena's sister and she was really sad about it, but I didn't really know. I don't know them, either of them. So I'm even less inclined to care. So I don't really care that much. But I'm going to go on to my next one, which is Chris's campaign, which I think is the best campaign in the game because it just goes so hard, man. Chris's campaign is the best campaign. It starts off, I'm a little wary because it starts off and Chris is like in England, not in England, he's in Europe somewhere. I don't know what country. I forget any of the country's name, but I think aside from China. And I think they're in the US. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Chris starts off in some country in Europe, in some bar in Europe, and he's getting drunk. And he's like, oh, you know, like, I'm so sad. And he's like, you know, he almost like fights people in the bar because they tell him to get out because he's so drunk. And a former partner of his, one of his former soldiers, because Chris is like I don't know the military classes. He's the boss. He's the boss of the soldier unit. And one of his former, you know, associates shows up and he's like, boss, you got to get back in. You got to get back into the BSAA. We need you. Like, there's another mission. We need you. You can't just sit here and be sad. That guy's name is Piers, and he's one of the best Resident Evil characters, I got to say, I've seen in the series because I just really like him, but you'll find out why. Anyway, they recruit him, and you don't really know why Chris is sad. I think he does say, like, oh, I lost my men. I can't do it again, you know, but Piers is pretty convincing, and he convinces him to go out on the mission, and he does. You know, you start off, and you start off, and immediately you're just back in the team. You're just back in the squad, and you're doing this mission. All right, Black Ops time. Oh, yeah, it's time to Black Ops. Black Ops. Black Ops.
There's just too many of them.
That was a nice tactical roll there, buddy. Not tactical enough. I'm not like Leon. I'm not going to take you out with sick tricks that do no damage. Black Ops. Black Ops. Black Ops.
Enemy sighted.
Black Ops.
Find cover. I don't want anyone charging in. Just hunker down and pick a target.
Okay, I was really thinking of charging in. Hold on. Clear. Stealth. You yell stealth, it makes you quieter. Chapter 2, though, I don't remember how chapter 1 ends, but chapter 2 is the mission that made Chris sad in the first place, that turned him into a raging drunk. And at the end of that, he's chasing the Ada Wong clone. I'm sorry, this sounds like a fever dream, but he's chasing the Ada Wong clone, and she throws like this little ball that has the C virus in it, and it turns all his soldiers. It turns everybody, it hits everybody but Chris and Piers, obviously, because you play as Piers as the co-op partner, so he can't die. But it hits everybody but Chris and Piers, and then, yeah, he loses all his men during the end of that mission. That mission has a pretty cool fight where you have to fight two giants that have like these weak points on the back, and one of them is already sticking out. Like, it's just like this kind of like this rod tentacle thing that sticks out on the back. If you shoot it, it does, you know, big damage or whatever. But one of them has them like stuck inside. Right, and you can do like an animation where you like pull it out, and it's pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, that one had a pretty cool boss fight. So that's chapter 2. Now chapter 3, that's the best chapter of the whole game, because in chapter 3 there's so much action in chapter 3, because you get one of your men named Marco. He's a hero. Like all Chris's characters, they're heroes, man. Chapter 3 just has too many, like so many sections. I think it's like the longest chapter. I want to say it felt long because as you're going through it, you're like, I think at this, Chris's whole thing is he's trying to stop the C virus. I don't think he's trying to stop Simmons. He's trying to stop the C virus, which is being administered by the Ada Wong clone, I think. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But anyway, in that section, you have to fight. So Marco is helping you throughout some of this chapter. and there's a giant snake that you have to fight. It turns invisible for some reason. I don't know why. I don't even know where the snake came from, but you fight a giant snake that turns invisible. That's pretty sick. You know, you have to, Marco helps you. You're one of your soldier. You, Marco, and Piers are on this mission, and Marco helps you by like plugging in this electricity thing, and you zap the snake, and you're just like, man, without Marco, I would not have made it. But guess what? Immediately afterwards, he gets injected again, I think by the Ada Wong clone, and it's just a repeat PTSD of Chris's trauma coming back. He's like, no, I'm gonna lose all my men again, you know, because that snake actually killed some of his other men who are on the mission. I only remember Marco because I think he was alive the longest, so I remember him, but it killed all the other men on this mission. So it's kind of like a repeat of the mission of the chapter beforehand, where he's like losing all his men again, and he's like, oh, I can't let this happen again. I can't let this happen again. So he's getting like really, really agitated and frustrated, and he's like, kill that fucking snake, like, you know. So he's like, he's really desperately trying to make sure his men survive this mission, so he doesn't have a repeat of what happened before in the past, before this campaign started. And so Marco gets injected, and he dies. At this point, it's just you and Piers again, and Marco dies, and he gets injected and transforms into whatever sort of thing that the C virus transforms you into. At this point, it transforms you into anything. There were like spiders and bees and gorillas, so it transforms you into whatever it wants, and it transformed him into bees. Yeah, so you end up having to kill Marco. Essentially, you have to kill Marco, and you know, Piers has to snap Chris back to reality. He's like, that would not have happened. We would not have lost all our men if we had decided to just forget about the snake and just, you know, try to do this a lot smarter. Like, you can't be acting like this. Snap back to reality, Captain. Oh, we're the only survivors. Damn. Oh yeah, I'd be pissed about that too.
Chris, we need to stay calm.
After what she's done to us, how many of our men are dead because of that bitch?
I'm right there with you, Captain. But your personal vendetta isn't gonna get us anywhere. If you hadn't been blinded by vengeance, we could have prevented some of those deaths.
Shut up.
Shut up.
Do you even care about our mission anymore?
Shut up!
I feel sorry for all the men that died believing in you.
Yeah, the delivery on that line hit pretty hard, huh? Because of that bitch.
It's a good thing Fate's not around to see you this way.
You know that Sonic the Hedgehog's voice actor? Did you know that?
I'm going after Ada.
And Chris snaps back to reality, and so they end up continuing the chase. They're chasing Ada Wong's clone at this point. They continue the chase, and you know, you meet up with Leon, and Chris is about to fucking kill Ada, and Leon's like, no, don't do it. We need her, you know, so that way she can testify, I guess, for my innocence. And Chris is like, okay, you know, I guess, even though we've never met before. But so they go on a chase, and then after that, you know, the Ada Wong clone immediately gets away because Leon technically, like, quote unquote, saves her, even though it's not the real Ada Wong. And you go on a car chase afterwards because the Ada Wong clone escapes in the car, and you just chase her in like a military vehicle, and it's just like this high speed like car chase. And this is the same chapter, by the way. This is the same chapter. It's just a high speed car chase and everything like that. And then I think she escapes on a boat somewhere. I'm pretty sure she escapes on a boat. And then the next chapter, you get on and then at the end of this chapter, you get on a fucking plane. And the next chapter, I think it's the next chapter, you're in the plane. It might be the same chapter, but you're in the plane, and you you chase her down to like the big boat that she ends up escaping to. And I'm just like, man, this campaign is like kind of insane. I think I like Chris's campaign the most because it's just like I'm so much more emotionally driven in Chris's campaign than I was in any of the other campaigns. But you're on the plane, and the Ada Wong clone is like essentially launched a missile, and man, I don't it's like, how do you jump back into that? She's essentially launched a missile that's going to spread the C virus. Don't ask me why she's doing this. She's just, I don't know. The antagonists in this game, to me, surface level, they're just evil. Anyway, yeah, she launches a fucking missile. Wait, did it launch? Oh shit.
It's heading for the city!
FOS, is anyone there?
FOS?
Chris Redfield with the BSAA here.
Hold on.
What's FOS?
Agent Leon Kennedy.
Oh, that's who Leon works for.
Leon, where are you?
Chris, we're just outside of Kachi. Why?
Get the hell out of there!
Oh, I know what we have to fight at the end. I remember now. It was in Sherry's campaign, but we didn't have to fight it as Sherry. And it crashes into the city because they're in China at this point. Obviously, you know, right? If you've been keep up. They're in China at this point. But anyway, after they launch, they failed to stop that missile launch on the plane that they're in, and so they decide to go to, I guess, like the source of whatever the Ada Wong clone had been working on, and that's underwater in a facility. So they get there, and the underwater facility is like kinda cool. I mean, it's a lot of action, you meet up with Sherry and Jake at the end of it, but it's the chapter, I think, after this where I think it's the most emotional, because when you get to the underground facility, you see that they've been like working on this really big, gigantic, you know, sea virus monster or whatever, and then Ada Wong was going to unleash it on the Ada Wong clone, sorry, was going to unleash it on the city, and they obviously got to stop it. So they got to stop it, and they get there, and that thing is super huge, and how are you going to fight it? And eventually, you know, there's like this chase, you run from it the whole time, and it's action packed. There's like quick time events and things like that. I will say I was pretty nostalgic for the quick time events. The quick time events were pretty cool. I did like them. I was like, oh man, I remember when these were like the shit. So yeah, you run from the monster. Eventually you find a spot where you have to fight it, and of course after you beat it the first time, it's not dead, so you run from it again. That's pretty cool. You're like sliding through doors that are closing as you're running, and he's like breaking apart this underwater bridge as you're running away from it, and then you stop again to do like basically like a second version of the boss fight. And during that fight, Piers gets like heavily injured. I'm talking about like he gets smacked against the wall, and then his arm gets pierced by some sort of metal that's sticking out, and this hero tears his arm off. You know, he's with the captain the whole time. This whole campaign, he's been the one to motivate the captain to keep going, and he never hesitates to do anything. And he tears his arm off, and at this point we've taken a serum of the C virus that we got from the Ada Wong clone, because she died. She died at some point earlier because she jumped off a cliff.
Damn it!
And you take the C virus and he injects it into his arm, because otherwise he's probably just gonna die. He injects it into his arm and he grows like a sick, I don't know why it's electric or lightning, but like it's a sick zombie lightning zapper arm or whatever, and he's just blasting away at this monster during the fights. I think if you were the co-op partner, I didn't play with someone at this point, but I think if you were the co-op partner, you would have just been transformed Pierce. That's what I'm going to call him, transformed Pierce, or Pierce parentheses transformed. You know.
Oh God, Piers, what did you do?
Are you good? And yeah, it's pretty sick, and you eventually zap the monster enough to where he's just like, oh, I can't handle this anymore, I gotta stop. And you know, we get to an escape pod, because Chris is like, no, Piers, you can make it, like you gotta make it out. And once we get to the escape pod, obviously Piers pushes us in and lets us escape, and he leaves himself behind, and he's like, oh, Captain, you gotta make it, you gotta go without me. And I'm just like, no, Piers, like you're the best character, why are you gonna die? No, no, Piers is gonna die. Oh.
Piers, open the goddamn
No,
door.
Piers is gonna die. No, my goofy partner. Oh, I'm actually sad Piers is gonna die. Yeah, he dies and we make it out, but not before he gets one last hurrah, because that monster, of course, is still alive. And he does his last zap. He charges that shit up like it's the super Kamehameha, and he zaps that monster, and the whole facility explodes as Chris escapes in a pod. And I was like, damn, that was the best campaign in this whole game. I wish it was just Chris. I'm not gonna lie. I would have been happy if it was just Chris' campaign. But I mean, not to say the other ones are okay. Well, the other ones aren't like super great, but like Chris was the best. And it ends, you know, with Chris being recruited for another mission again. And this man gets up and is like, I got a job to do, you know, and he walks away, and it's like heroic. And you know, he goes back on another mission, even though he has lost all his men twice in a row. He got up like it was just another Tuesday. And so I'm like, you know what? Chris is kind of cool. Chris is a kind of pretty cool guy. So that was Chris's campaign. That was pretty cool. And then Sherry and Jake's, I don't know if I like hers more than Leon's, only because, I mean, it's kind of cool. I do like Sherry and Jake's dynamic. I think that's mostly what I liked. I like their dynamic and their levels. Their levels were pretty varied, because you start off fighting Duavo in some European country, and it was actually the campaign I played first, so I didn't really get most of the mechanics because the game doesn't really explain any of the movement mechanics to you at all. I think they just explain to you how to shoot, and sometimes they tell you how to slide, and they told me how to mix herbs. So there was that. But yeah, Sherry's campaign was cool. I call it Sherry's even though it's technically Jake's, but I played as Sherry because I know Sherry, so I was like, oh, I'm interested to see what she's been up to. I haven't seen a lick of Sherry since Resident Evil 2. Her levels were pretty varied. You start off in like a European country fighting Duavo because you're there to like save Jake. Jake has antibodies to the C virus, so he's obviously the cure. So a lot of it's just about making sure that he gets out of these situations alive. And it's like a cool, I'm not gonna say it's like a buddy cop thing because that's not really what it is, but obviously there's like this sort of romantic undertones. You know, Jake is very like not pushy but standoffish about his past, and throughout the campaign you kind of uncover that you discover that he's Wesker's son, which didn't really make much sense to me because I don't know where that fits into the overall like Resident Evil lore or whatever. Not that I know too much about the lore, but like I'm just like, okay, well, I guess Wesker has a son just out of nowhere. You know, he's 20, so it's been a while. I don't know when Wesker had time to do that. I guess he's had plenty of time, but I don't know. Anyway, and a lot of their campaign is also about being chased by what I think the guy is called a the guy is called Ustanok. So it's kind of reminiscent of like Nemesis, where it's just like this guy that just won't die, and he chases you throughout the campaign. Although it's more set piece heavy than it is where it was a lot more active in Resident Evil 3 and 2. There's like a tyrant chasing you. So that's a lot of what their campaign is about. I'm probably going to talk about hers a little less, only because I guess hers felt more like Resident Evil 2 now that I think about it. Hers was kind of like a Resident Evil 2 campaign, you know, because like Leon and Claire, you know, I think they fight the Ustanok at the end on like a moving train, I think, at the end. Yeah, okay, it's not really like a train, but it's some sort of like transportation system that's basically like a train, I guess. So I'm just gonna call it a train. But yeah, you end up beating him on a train just like in Resident Evil 2 as well. So it was pretty cool. The boss fights were pretty cool in Sherry's too. I know at the end when you have to legitimately fight the Ustanok for the final boss, or is it Utanak? I can't remember, but when you have to fight him, it's like in a lava section, so there's like fire everywhere. It kind of reminded me of Resident Evil 5. Yeah, you end up having to like break out of a hospital at some point, and ice facility, and you go through like a pretty lavish Chinese, I'm not really sure what it was. Kind of seemed like a really, really lavish club or something like that. Although I don't really think it was a club. Anyway, yeah, hers was probably the most varied. You also get to ride a snowmobile, so that's pretty cool. Hers was probably the most, hers probably had the most varied environments, but I think maybe Chris had the most varied action set pieces. Leon's felt pretty samey as I went through. And then there's one more campaign that I don't really want to talk about that much because it's not really that interesting. It's Ada's, and her story is just that she helps everybody randomly throughout the campaigns without them knowing. And she discovers that the Ada Wong clone is someone named Carla, who is attached to Leon's antagonist Simmons, and I don't know who Carla is. She just is like, oh, so it's you, Carla, you're the one who cloned yourself and now you're gonna regret it. And I think she cloned her. I don't know. I didn't get that. I'm not gonna lie, I don't really get the Resident Evil 6 overall story. Someone's gonna have to explain it to me. I went in the files after I beat the game, and there's a lot of text in those files, and I'm like, oh, so the story's all here. And I don't think I really care to know what the story is, even though the files are there. And maybe I'll read it just out of interest at some point, but I don't think would it have made the game better if it were the same game. No, I wouldn't have been made the game better even if they had told me with the same game. The Resident Evil 6 I think still kind of suffers from feeling like a slightly generic, but the movement stuff is cool. The cover system was a lot better than whatever they were trying to do in 5. So like if it wasn't a Resident Evil game, I think I'd rate it a little bit higher, but because it is, I just don't know if I still really care about it that much. But I did like it. That sounds harsh, but I did like Resident Evil 6. I don't feel like I have much more to say about it other than that though. Like outside of Chris's campaign, the characters were just okay at best. You know, they don't really, I guess it's just cool to see Resident Evil characters do stuff in an action set piece. And I guess that's kind of okay. You know, I think the game, I don't know if is it a hated game? I don't know if it's a hated game, but I don't know. It's a fine game. It's fine. I don't think there's anything really dramatic I could say about it. It was just a pretty cool, fun game to play. I bought it for like $5. So it's definitely worth it for $5. There's 4 campaigns in there. I will say, playing co-op, super fun. The co-op stuff is pretty cool. I played with someone in chat a couple times, and I had a lot of fun doing that. It was pretty cool. And apparently, if you know, when the game came out, if if everybody was playing co-op and online and stuff like that, and you were match made, you would occasionally just run into online players during the campaign, because Sherry and Jake run into Leon and Helena during the campaign, and those would have been actual real life players doing the Jake and Sherry campaign if you were playing as Leon and Helena. So that's pretty cool. And the Ada Wong stuff where she's helping everybody, that would have been someone doing the Ada Wong campaign. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And it has some cool multiplayer modes that I didn't check out, but they sounded cool. There was one where you got to play as the enemy, and they had the human players have to try and kill you. And I was like, oh, that's like Evolve ahead of its time. Maybe they would work now. Who knows? But anyway, yeah, Resident Evil 6, okay, gets a 1 thumbs up for me.